Can you hear me okay? Hello? Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yes.
Okay. On behalf of the Akron Press Club, the Racing Bliss Institute of Applied Politics at the University of Akron, and No Labels of Akron, I would like to welcome you all here today to hear from Ohio Attorney General Mike DeWine. I am Dave Cohen, Vice President of Programs for the Akron Press Club, and also a Professor of Political Science and Fellow of the Bliss Institute at the University of Akron. I have a few housekeeping matters to attend to before we get started. Including today, we have a number of campaign-related events with candidates coming to the Press Club during this fall's midterm election season. We're about halfway through that. On October 22nd, we will have Ohio Auditor Dave Yost, who is a Republican running for re-election. And then October 28th, we will have his opponent, Ohio Representative John Patrick Carney, a Democrat, who is running for that same state auditor seat. And I announced this last week, but in case you didn't hear it, October 14th, the event with the Ohio Republican Party Chairman, Matt Borges, has been canceled. It may be rescheduled, it may not be. Stay tuned for that. Additional details for these events and Press Club membership information may be found on our website, akronpressclub.org. If you are not a member, please consider joining. Our annual membership is very, very reasonable, and it allows for discounts on events such as these. Also, please, if you are a Facebook member, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter at Akron Press Club. As is the tradition of the Press Club, we will have time for Q&A after the prepared remarks. There are index cards on the tables, along with pens. Please write down your questions, and someone will be around to collect them during the program. We probably can't get to all the questions, but we will do our best to get to as many as we possibly can. Past Akron Press Club President and current WKSU reporter and web editor, M.L. Schultze, will be running the Q&A portion of the program. I would like to thank you all for coming out today. Your support of these luncheons allows for the Press Club to fund scholarships for student journalists and public relations professionals. And now, if you would like to silence your cell phones or other devices that may make noise, I would like to introduce you to David Matheny, who is the president of No Labels of Akron, who is one of the co-sponsoring organizations today, and he will introduce our speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Cohen. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'll tell you a little bit about Attorney General Mike DeWine. He has a long and distinguished career in public service. Attorney General DeWine served as Greene County prosecutor. I'm sorry?
Speaking to the mic.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Project. Okay. Attorney General DeWine served as Greene County prosecuting attorney in the Ohio State Senate, in the United States House of Representatives, as Ohio Lieutenant Governor, and in the United States Senate. Attorney General DeWine grew up in Yellow Springs, Ohio, and married his high school sweetheart, Fran, while both were still students at Miami University. The DeWines, who have resided in Cedarville Township since Attorney General DeWine graduated from law school, are the parents of 8 children and the grandparents of 20 grandchildren. Mike is running for re-election for Ohio Attorney General. Please join me in welcoming Attorney General DeWine.
Thank you very much. All of you obviously continue to eat. I tell people as the father of 8 children, I'm used to talking when others are eating. And used to absolutely no one paying any attention. So get more food back there, go to the bathroom, whatever you want to do. We'll be just fine. You kind of heard the bio. Not much really to add to that. Other than, well, I got out of law school. I was very fortunate, and I was named as an assistant county prosecuting attorney in my home county of Greene County. I served that position for a couple of years, and then shortly after that, I was actually elected as county prosecuting attorney. What you see as county prosecuting attorney, I tell people, and Lynn Slavey certainly knows this, Our county wasn't as big as Summit, but every problem in the community comes across your desk. And I think every job that I've held, candidly, has been influenced and has been informed by the 6.5 years that I served in the office of prosecuting attorney. Has a really, really profound impact. When I was here 4 years ago, we talked about some of the things that I wanted to do as Attorney General. And I think probably the primary thing that I talked about was fixing BCI, the State Crime Lab. BCI was a place that I loved then, because when I was a county prosecuting attorney, we called them for work to help us, whether it be at a crime scene, whether it be to run a polygraph on a witness we weren't sure was telling us the truth, all kinds of different things to process our drugs that we would seize, the police agencies would seize. What I heard as I traveled around the state 4 years ago was that BCI was still well respected. People thought they did a good job, but they were so far behind. So when I became Attorney General, we started tackling that. The day I took office, we found later, when we figured it out, if there was a rape that was occurred any place in the state of Ohio, or any other serious crime where DNA evidence was to be taken into the crime lab, where you didn't know who the assailant was, for example, but you have this unknown DNA, it would have taken, on an average, 125 days before that was processed. So that's just not one more government agency being slow. It is sometimes a matter of life and death. You have a rapist who is loose, you don't test it. When you do test it, 125 days later, you get a hit, you get a match, and then you're able to get him. But for 125 days, he's been out. During the time I've been Attorney General, we've had a 4-fold increase in the amount of DNA that comes to our office. 4 times. It's absolutely amazing. In spite of that, we've been able to cut the time from 125 days down to an average of 23 days. And we can turn a case around in 24 hours to 48 hours when it's an emergency. This spring, and just to give you an example, in Columbus, Ohio, a little 13-year-old little girl, was standing in front of her school bus stop at 6:30 in the morning. A guy comes up, starts talking to her, a stranger, he abducts her, and he rapes her. When our people who work at the crime lab got into work the next day, they'd seen this on the nightly news in Columbus, and they said, told their supervisor, call Columbus Police Department. See if they got a rape kit on the little girl. And they did, and they brought it in. And within 25 or 26 hours, we had processed it, gone into the national DNA database where there's 11 million known and unknown profiles of DNA. We got a hit, which means we got a match. We were able to call Columbus back and tell them, here's your guy, go get him. 4 hours later, they picked him up. That's what you can do when you're current, and that's what we are today. Every single area that we measure, crime lab, virtually everyone, we have improved as far as the time. Makes a rather dramatic difference. The most dramatic difference, of course, has been in regard to the DNA testing. One thing that I did not think about when I became Attorney General, didn't know we were going to get into, was the old rape kit problem. I first read about that when I was in the United States Senate. We actually took some action. I was on the Judiciary Committee, and I was also on the Appropriations Committee. We were able to get some money and send it back to states, and we thought, frankly, that the problem of the old rape kits that were sitting around in the police departments never tested, I sort of thought that went away. But when I became Attorney General, I found out that it had not gone away, that we had a very, very serious problem in the state. I thought at first there were hundreds of these old rape kits. Now, I have no authority to tell police departments to bring evidence into our crime lab. We are kind of a passive agent. They bring it to us, we test it, they make those decisions. So I had to figure out some way to get these old rape kits, an incentive to get these old rape kits into our office. And so I put a working group together of people who are familiar with that area of the law. A lot of these individuals were victim rights advocates, and we had other people involved in law enforcement. And I asked them to come back and tell us, when should a rape kit be tested? Kind of a basic question, but we never had that protocol in the state. They came back and said every rape kit should be tested unless there wasn't a crime. So I took that, sent it out to every police department in the state, and I told them, start bringing us these old rape kits. No one had a clue how many there were. They started coming in. And I'll fast forward to today and just tell you where we are today. We found out that there were not hundreds, there were rather thousands of these old rape kits. And when I say old, I mean some 18, 19, pushing up against the statute of limitations at 20 years. They started coming in. We have now, we also found out that Cuyahoga County, actually the Cleveland Police Department, instead of having hundreds, turns out they had 4,600. 4,600 old rape kits that had never been tested. We have, as of today, tested over 5,000 of them. We've got hits or matches on 37% of those. So that means we're going back to police departments with these old cases and saying, we now know who the rapist is. They, in turn, of course, are going back to victims. And in some cases, they tell victims, we know who did it, and we've checked, and the guy is dead. In other cases, they say, we know who did it, and the guy's in prison. And in other cases, they're telling them, we know who did it, and we're going to go arrest him. Cuyahoga County alone has indicted over 200 individuals so far as a result of this program. It's a program that I'm very, very proud of. We're going to continue to do it. We have about 86 or 8,700, I think, rape kits that have come into us. We're testing them now at the rate of about 300 per month. So every month, until they're all done, we're going to be able to go back to police departments and tell them we've got a hit on probably over 100 cases. So it's been really, really amazing. Let me tell you, to kind of put a face with this, these are real people. I'm going to talk about a man by the name of Robert Green out of Cuyahoga County. From 1993 to 2002, an unidentified man lured 7 different women into cars in empty lots and behind abandoned buildings in Cleveland. Once he got them there, he brutally assaulted and raped them. After the rapes took place, he would toss the victims from the car naked, partially dressed, and leave them. Police had no suspects, and the rape kits that were taken were not tested. After we started our rape kit initiative, as I said, we received more than 4,000 untested rape kits from the Cleveland Police Department alone. As part of that, rape kits from Cleveland rape victims were tested, and a number of them came back with a hit to the same man. In fact, initially we had a hit on 5. So you have 5 unknowns in the database as you're putting them in there now. They match to each other. Knowing there was a serial rapist out there, the Cleveland police reopened these cases, and they assigned a veteran sex crimes detective to the case. That detective did a fantastic job. He pinpointed a pattern between all the victims and the old reports, and was able to identify Robert Green as a suspect with some really great, outstanding police work. Green submitted his DNA when questioned. BCI, our crime lab, tested that DNA, and sure enough, it matched the DNA that was submitted in 7 different rape kits that were tested. Green pled guilty to all the rapes and was sentenced to 135 years in prison, and that is where he is today. That is why we do it. We do it to protect the public, which I think is my job as the Attorney General. Everything we do in the office comes under that category to protect the public. We also do it because we needed to have justice for those victims. Imagine if you were a victim. You'd gone through a brutal rape. You were told that if you would submit and give evidence, which would go into a rape kit, that could be used to find your assailant. And then you find 15 years later, they never even tested your rape kit. So for these victims, finally, there is justice. And it's one of the things that, frankly, I like about the Attorney General's office. I can get in and see a problem, and we can go after it and make a difference. We talk about another issue. That issue has to do with prescription drugs and then heroin. When I became Attorney General, I heard throughout the campaign as I traveled around Ohio. In fact, frankly, my wife Fran was the first one to bring it to my attention. She goes out and campaigns in every county separate from me. And she would tell me about talking to prosecutors, talking to sheriffs, coroners along the Ohio River about the prescription drug problem. And then I heard about it as well when I was out. When I became Attorney General, we set up a great partnership, not just with the governor, but also with local police, with federal authorities, and we made a difference going after this problem. One thing we found is that there were doctors who are just nothing more than drug dealers. So far, we've taken the licenses of 50 doctors and 14 pharmacists. The legislature passed legislation at our urging which allowed us to close the pill mills. And so we've made some real progress in regard to pain medication and the deaths that are caused by it. The problem's still here, but we've certainly made a lot of progress. The heroin problem is in this state immense. I'm not going to spend a lot of time describing it. I'll simply say if anyone is listening to this, whoever is listening to this, you have a heroin problem in your community. I don't care where you're from or where you live in the state. I don't care if you're from Vinton County, Ohio, a county of 14,000 population, or if you're from the city of Cleveland, or the city of Akron, or a suburb. Everybody has that heroin problem today. We've done some things to try to make a difference. The Attorney General's role is historically a law enforcement role. That's what we historically do. And so we run our crime lab, and the amount of evidence that's coming in from these drug arrests and prosecutions is, in regard specifically to heroin, has dramatically continued to go up every single year. We've cut the time it takes to get the evidence back, and we've made a difference in that regard. We also have agents, and this has been done in the past, agents from BCI who are part of multi-jurisdiction task forces around the state and work with local law enforcement. But we've also done some things that are different. We set up a heroin unit, a specific heroin unit in the Attorney General's office. And because this is a public meeting, I can't tell you exactly what it does, but the whole goal is to help local law enforcement with more technology and more expertise so that they can go higher up, literally the food chain, as you get the bigger dealers. We have had a success so far in Lorain, where we've gotten some of the big dealers in Lorain County as a direct result of this program. We've done it in Delaware County as well, and we have many more cases that are currently under investigation. Having said that, no matter what group I'm talking to, I always tell them we cannot arrest our way out of this problem. That law enforcement is important, treatment is important, but probably the most important thing is education and prevention, and that's where everybody in this room can come in. What I have found as I've traveled around the state is that the counties who have really started to fight back successfully have been those counties where there's been a grassroots effort in regard to education. A grassroots effort involving, usually led, frankly, by mothers, moms who've lost kids, sometimes dads who have lost kids. And you get to the point where the community just says, we're sick of it, and we're not going to put up with it anymore, and we're going to literally fight back. Those counties that have done that have started to see some results. And has to be everybody. It has to be the business community, has to be the churches, has to be educators, and just moms and dads who worry about their own kids. We've seen some success. Something that we do in our office to spread that success is that I have 3 individuals, 3 women, who work for me, who I hired out of these local grassroots areas. 3 people, 3 different counties. 2 of the individuals were led to start that grassroots effort by the loss of a child. So they bring tremendous passion, they bring tremendous energy. They take that sorrow that will be with them every single day of their life and try to make something positive out of it so other families don't suffer what they have suffered. So that is something that is available to any community. We continue to expand that unit. These individuals will go out and help people, not to tell you what to do in Summit County or tell you what to do in Stark County, but rather to tell you what other counties have done, other communities have done, other people have done, and give you ideas about what works in regard to education and what does not work. Let me talk for a moment about something that we have done that is new to the Attorney General's office. Attorney General historically does consumer fraud. We enforce the Consumer Sales Practice Act. We do that civilly. We get complaints, we go out, and if we think a violation of the Consumer Sales Practice Act, we start working with the violator. We get them, in some cases, to voluntarily change what they're doing. In other cases, we have to take them into court. We continue to do that. And we get, frankly, about 30,000 calls every year from someone who thinks that there's been a violation of the law. So it's a very active group. But what we have added to that since I became Attorney General, and it goes back, I guess, to my experience as a county prosecuting attorney, some of these cases that are coming in need to be dealt with from a criminal point of view. We have always had scam artists, we've always had crooks and con artists, I guess, from time immemorial. But now they've got that long reach. And what is that reach? It's called the internet. And it's also called long-distance phoning, telemarketing. So you can have a couple, as we did in Coshocton, Ohio, who ripped off people in 43 different states on Craigslist, selling them tickets to events that actually existed, only they didn't own the tickets. What I did is I put prosecutors into that unit for the first time. Experienced prosecutors, and I put experienced investigators. And so as these calls now come in, we look to see whether or not there is actually a potential criminal case. Now, I'll just give you one example. It's from the other side of the state, Miami County. We had a land scam group, scammers that were targeting the elderly. 18 of them we prosecuted in Miami County. They were involved in over 40 states. They ripped people off for millions and millions, collectively millions and millions of dollars. And so we started working that case and then went back to the local authorities and worked very closely with them to get these individuals, the great majority of them who are now in prison. That has been a change as we focus on elderly and we focus on these scams. We have a Medicaid fraud unit. Since I became Attorney General, bluntly, it was a very good unit when I became Attorney General. And we've, I think, taken it to a higher level, but they're very, very good. We have prosecuted, since I became Attorney General, over close to 800 individuals for Medicaid fraud and healthcare fraud in the state of Ohio. An area that I have cared about deeply for many, many years, that's probably not in, or is not in the jurisdiction of the Attorney General, is foster care and some of the problems connected with children who stay in foster care and cannot be adopted legally and ultimately age out of foster care. I became interested in this as a young assistant county prosecuting attorney when my job was to represent children's services in court. I saw some just horrible, horrible things that have stayed with me all my life. I worked on this when I was in Congress, passing legislation to change the law in this area. And when I became Attorney General, I decided I was going to continue to do that. So several years ago, we held hearings all over the state of Ohio to look at the foster care system. I'll make a long story quite short and simply say that as a result of those hearings, we had legislation that was introduced in the state legislature, and that legislation has been passed that makes a difference in regard to foster care. Something else that I saw when I was a young county prosecuting attorney, assistant county prosecutor, and it was probably the biggest shock I had as a 25-year-old becoming an assistant prosecutor, was the number of cases that we had of sexual abuse of children. I just couldn't believe it. When I became Attorney General, I decided the Attorney General's office was going to do something about this and to join that fight as well. We now have a unit to deal with crimes against children. We have some of our agents who go on the internet and they will find people who are file sharing child pornography. And when I say child pornography, this is not benign. This is the nastiest, most horrible things you can imagine. The videotaping of a raping of a child. If you can dream it, they do it. These individuals were file sharing this information, which of course is a crime in the state of Ohio. What we find, though, is when we go out and work with the local officials to arrest them, we find in some cases, not every case, but in some cases, that not only are they watching this stuff on the internet and sharing it and sending it across state lines, but they're also directly molesting children. One of the more gratifying things has been that we've been able to stop some of these people who are have been actively molesting children. Let me talk about a couple things that we've done in regard to Summit County and Akron specifically, and then I'll just stop and open it up for your questions. We brought to Akron a program that has been successful in cities as diverse as Boston and Cincinnati. It has a proven track record. It's a program called Safe Neighborhoods. The basic principle behind it is that you can go into any city in the state of Ohio, and if you talk to people in law enforcement, you talk to the chief, that chief can tell you the violent people in the community. And it's usually a relatively small number of people. A city the size of Akron, it might be 40, 50, 60 people. And they're known to law enforcement. And the whole idea behind this is to lessen the amount of violent crime that's occurring in a city. And so what you simply do is you target those individuals. Many of them are on parole and on probation. We have some hook over them from a law enforcement point of view, and we bring them in. We do what's called a call-in, and we bring them in. And we work very, very closely with the chief. We work very, very closely with the detectives and the police department. You bring these individuals in, and basically you tell them you can have it one way or the other. Over here, we've got some people, social service people. They'll help you get jobs. They'll help you with training, help you turn your life around. If you want to continue to commit violent acts, however, we got the other group over here. And we want you to know that we're watching you. We know who you are. And if we catch you again, we're coming down very, very, very hard on you. This is a program that works. It's pretty easy to find out if it works or not because you simply track these people. And if they commit another crime of violence, the program hasn't worked for them. If they don't, it's worked. So far, we've done this, I think, in 5 or 6 cities. We're actively involved right now doing it. I think we've only, in the state of Ohio, only had one person that we know of who we identified, or the local police identified, that has gone back and committed another act of violence. It's a program that has a long history of working, and we're glad to be able to bring it to Akron. When there was a mortgage settlement that all the attorney generals, you remember the robo signing and the scandals connected with that, we had all the attorney generals of the nation got together and started negotiating with some of these mortgage servicers. I decided when we had the settlement, we got I think $93 million back to the Attorney General's office for us to spend to help victims. Some of the victims, I believe, were people who continued to live in neighborhoods where there were houses that had been abandoned, houses that were now crack houses, houses that were now just run down, destroying really that neighborhood, almost a cancer on that neighborhood. So what I did is took that $75 million, and spread it around throughout the state of Ohio, all 88 counties, to demolish homes. Because the demolition of these homes is not cheap. In Summit County, I looked up the numbers, we have been responsible, we believe, for 821 units in Summit County that have been taken down with this money. So it's been a program that has worked very well. We have a very close relationship with your county prosecuting attorney, Sherry Bevan Walsh. It's a relationship, we deal with her and her staff almost every single week, because we do, one of the things that we do is work with local law enforcement, but we also work with county prosecuting attorneys. The Craigslist murder case that occurred here, that was tried here, that was a case where we had a special prosecuting attorney on that. We had a serial rapist who was convicted by the use of our special prosecuting attorney. We had about 20 cases, over 20 cases, where your county prosecutor has asked us to come in and to prosecute the case. I see everybody standing. My time is probably up. 30 seconds on the future. We're going to continue to do what we're doing. We've taken our state crime lab to this level. We're going to take it to this level. We have a partnership now with Bowling Green State University. We're actually building a new crime lab on Bowling Green State University's campus. We're engaged, we'll be engaged shortly in some very serious research in conjunction with Bowling Green on forensic science. It is a very neglected area where there isn't a whole lot of research that's done. We want BCI to be one of the leaders in the country, if not the leader. So we're going to take it to a new level. Our focus every single day is on protecting Ohio families. The way we do it, because only in Medicaid do we have original jurisdiction. The way we do it every day is by enhancing the ability of police, prosecutors, coroners, and sheriffs to do their job. We give them that assistance, and that's how it really makes a difference. Thank you all very much.
And as we warned you, there will be questions. There are many. Thank you. And several of them, many of them, come down to the question of why are you not debating your opponent who says he will debate you anytime, any place?
My opponent and I have had, well, I would call a debate. He may not. I mean, the truth is, none of these are debates. You know, even the presidential debates are not a classic debate in the way that it is taught in college. So the question is, are the people of the state of Ohio, do they know the difference between the candidates? We had a joint appearance, debate, whatever you want to call it, with Gannett News. We also did one with the Cleveland Plain Dealer. The one was is up on the internet. You can hear the audio. The other one is up on the internet. You can hear the audio and the video. And if anyone has the patience to listen and watch for over 100 minutes, I will guarantee you, you will come away from that with a very clear knowledge that there's fundamental differences between my opponent and myself. So, you know, we're out there. I don't think anyone has, who wants to be informed has any way of, I mean, they have ample opportunity to be informed what the differences are. Frankly, one of the differences that I talk about all the time is experience. You know, my opponent has been on the city council. He's been a county commissioner. He has great experience, but it's just not the experience to be Attorney General of the state of Ohio. He has never prosecuted a case. He's never been in a courtroom facing a defense attorney. He does not have experience in that area. And that has been the area where I've had the most experience over the years.
Please evaluate your office's response to the Walmart shooting in Beaver Creek, Ohio, and why do you think there hasn't been the outrage that's happened in Ferguson, Missouri?
Well, let me take that, and I'll try to be as quick as I can because there's a lot of questions about it. We get involved in cases in a number of ways. Let me walk you quickly through Walmart. Our crime scene unit was called that night, probably within an hour of the shooting. They went They went out there and they processed the crime scene. That is not unusual. We do crime scenes all the time. That's what each one of those individuals does. So we were first involved by our BCI being called to the scene and to do the crime scene. The next day, I believe it was the next day, the chief called me and said, we can't investigate ourselves. This is an officer-involved shooting. We need someone outside the Beaver Creek Police Department, and would you do it? And our answer almost inevitably to police departments is yes, we do that. That's how we got in the Steubenville case. It's how we got in a high-speed chase in Cleveland, those investigations. So we put agents in there who started to do the investigation. After that, at some point, the county prosecuting attorney talked to me and said, we want you to take this case to a grand jury. Greene County has a tradition, as some counties do, of taking every officer-involved shooting case to a grand jury, to let the citizens of that county look at it and make their own evaluation. Shortly after that, I was contacted by the lawyer for the deceased man's family, the decedent's family, and they said, he told me the father wants to see the video. Now, understand there's 200 cameras in Walmart. So if you go into Walmart, just understand you're being, somebody can look at you. There's 200 cameras there. So we had a partial download. What we ended up doing, what BCI ended up doing weeks and weeks later was to be, and with assistance, frankly, from the FBI, was to be able to put it in a real time so that you could see all the different people who were involved in this. But at that point, all we had was from one camera that we'd identified, which actually showed the decedent walking around and showed when he was shot. Didn't show the officers, but showed where he was shot. The family wanted to see that. I took that over. BCI actually took it over. I met with the family and showed them that video. Mom, very understandably, did not want to see it. And I told the father, I wouldn't watch it if I was you. But he had every right, I felt he had the right to look at this, his son. So he did that. Shortly after that, the family expressed the belief that I should not be involved in the prosecution, not the prosecution, but the case, taking the case to the grand jury. It's a better way of saying it. Because when you go to a grand jury, you don't know if the case is going to be indicted or not. Because of my long connection with Greene County, and I do have a long connection with Greene County. And so, while I didn't think there was a conflict, I said, yeah, that I will not be involved in this case. So I told the local common pleas judge, I told the county prosecuting attorney, I recommended, I said, get whoever you want to. I would recommend Mark Pietmeyer because he has more experience in these things than anybody that I'm at least familiar with. He was an assistant county prosecuting attorney in Hamilton County. He is my first relationship with him, when I first knew who he was when the Lucasville riot took place. I was lieutenant governor, and after that, he handled all the prosecutions of that. He's handled a number of officer-involved shootings. Some cases, he's taken to a grand jury. The grand jury has indicted that officer, and he's been convicted. Sometimes they've indicted the officer, he's been acquitted. Other cases, the grand jury didn't indict. So he's had all kinds of different results, all kinds of different cases. So the court did appoint him. Let me just turn to one last issue because people are always interested in this. I made a decision after consulting with the trial lawyers in my office, people who try criminal cases every single day, that it would not be good and that we should not release the video to the public at that time. We always knew it would be released. The only question is, when do you release it? We made the decision, and I made the decision after consulting with our team, that we should not release that prior to the grand jury. That we should have a grand jury that would go in and look at that and not be influenced by what they'd already seen on TV, by the talk show host, by all the things that would happen when we would show that video. Mark Pietmeyer was on the case for over a month after I was clearly off the case, and he made the same decision. The case was taken to a grand jury. The grand jury did not indict. The day that was announced, Pietmeyer released the video, and we released over the next few days everything basically in our file. virtually everything that we have is now out because the grand jury has done this job. The same day the grand jury came back, I asked the Justice Department, or stated that the Justice Department, I thought, should get involved and take a look at it. I respect the grand jury process. I respect what they did. These are citizens of the county who heard all the evidence, saw absolutely everything there was to see. They made the decision. But I think in a case of that high profile, in a case with that great emotion, and it's very understandable that it has that emotion, the Justice Department should take a look at it. And so they are now doing that. We have turned over everything that we have to the Justice Department that they wanted. I don't know whether the transfer has been made with absolutely everything, but we told them immediately we would give them anything that they wanted. Backing up just a moment, as the investigation unfolded before the grand jury, we were in contact with the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Ohio and with the FBI, and were sharing with them basically where the case was. They told us that they would wait. They wanted to wait. They said that the normal practice of the Justice Department is to wait until after the local authorities are done. Once the local authorities are done, they would then decide whether they wanted to become involved or not. That's their normal procedure. They followed that normal procedure in this case. They made a decision very quickly that they did want to take a look at it, and that's where the case is today.
Speaking of the Justice Department, your federal counterpart, Eric Holder, posted a message yesterday criticizing Ohio's decision to cut back on early voting. Several questions relate to that situation. Can you speak to the continued pursuit of appeals to cut back on early voting in the state? And could the state's dollars be put to better use?
I have certainly respect for the Attorney General of the United States. But he did not raise his hand and take a solemn oath that he would support the Constitution, not only of the United States, but the state of Ohio. I'm the one that did that. I'm the one that said I would defend Ohio statutes. I do not have a choice about defending Ohio statutes. We defend statutes that we agree with, statutes we don't agree with. That is the job of the Attorney General. I didn't talk much about it today, but the job, one of the main jobs of the Attorney General is we're the lawyer for the state of Ohio. We're the lawyer for the legislature, we're the lawyer for the governor, and in this case, we're the lawyer for the Secretary of State. So when the state of Ohio, through its legislature, enacts legislation, which they did, having to do with the hours and time of voting, it is our job to defend it. Now, we did point out that there were a large number of states that did not have as open voting as Ohio. In fact, the majority of states do not have as open, and by open I mean opportunities. There are still states who vote on election day only. Seriously. So our argument that we made, the legal argument that we made in court, which we felt was a good argument, and ultimately, apparently court thought so, but the argument that we made was that, okay, if Ohio with its Board of Elections, 30 days, what do we have now?
28.
28 days. Ohio with its 28 days was unconstitutional. What about all the states that do 1 day? What about the states that are more restrictive than us? Supreme Court made a decision, and we move on. My job is to make the best argument I can for my client, my statutory client. Unlike the lawyers in this room, I don't get to pick my statutory clients. I love them all. I'm not saying I would do with any of them, but they are my clients by statute, and that's my job. And I don't think, Mr. Peppers has criticized me for this. I just think he's wrong. I think he does not have a full understanding of the job of the Attorney General of the state of Ohio, and that is to argue these cases in court or have their lawyers argue them in court. I mean, what would it be what would happen for all the lawyers who are here and who understand, talk about the adversarial system, what would happen? What would happen if they called in front of a court, whether it be a federal district court or the Sixth Circuit or whoever it would be, and they say, and representing the state of Ohio, there's no one there. I don't have that luxury.
Since we're talking courts and decisions, if the Sixth Circuit blocks Ohio's gay marriage ban, will you appeal? Why or why not?
That's a very good question to follow up from the last question, and I'll be much shorter because I pretty much said it. The voters of the state of Ohio, whether you agree with the decision or not, voted by a pretty big margin 10 years ago to put into the Ohio Constitution a provision that says marriage is between a man and a woman. I have an obligation to defend it. If the voters 10 years ago had put into the state of Ohio Constitution that marriage can be between a man and a man, a woman and a woman, and that was challenged, I would today be defending that. Lee Fisher, who I know, consider a friend, but who is probably a good ways difference from me on the political spectrum, put it pretty well. I don't have a direct quote, but he was quoted in the paper when he was the Attorney General of the state of Ohio, and the state legislature passed what he would have considered a bad bill having to do with abortion that he did not agree with. He said, my job is I don't have to agree with it. My job still is to defend it. And that's what he did. That's what we do.
How can you pledge to the Cincinnati Right to Life that you will try to revoke local laws around Ohio that simply say gay people can't be discriminated against? Is this the best use of your time?
No, that's not, we don't reach out and say we're going to impact local laws. It's not what I do. So I guess I'd have to see what was written, but no, that's not what we do.
Moving to the heroin epidemic and some other questions about drug use, misuse. First, where do you stand on movements to legalize marijuana either recreationally or for medical purposes? And then we'll move on to the rest.
Okay, I'm opposed to that for recreational purposes. What I tell people when they ask me the question and say, shouldn't Ohio kind of get with the program here? We've got the movement is towards legalization of marijuana. I talk about the 50 laboratories of democracy. And what I would suggest we all do before we make any decision in the state of Ohio, let's see how it really works in Colorado over a long period of time. Let's see what other problems that are out there by legalizing marijuana. I'm not going to be for it, but I think for the average voter, let's wait a few years, see what happens in Washington State, see what happens in Colorado. I think unlike the 60s or the 70s, I think we today know more about marijuana. And I'm not a doctor. I didn't get great grades in science. My wife did. I didn't. But I will tell you what I read, and what I read is that for a child who is developing, a teenager who is developing, that the use of marijuana is not helpful to the development of their brain. I think we know more today than we knew before. If you legalize any drug, you're going to have one thing that's going to happen, and that use will go up. It's going to go up. I think it would be a mistake.
Can you elaborate further on specifically how Ohio can fight the heroin epidemic that has struck the state?
I think we have to first start by talking a little bit more, and thank you for the question, about the nature of the problem. Here's the nature of the problem. It is pervasive. It is everywhere. The Mexican drug cartels have got it really figured out. They have a perfect business model that kills a lot of people and makes them a lot of money. That business model is they grow the poppies down there in Mexico. They process it down there. They ship it across our border. They go into places like Akron. They go to cities across the state, and it goes out from there to all the different counties. It is relatively cheap. It is very cheap. If you know the number to call in any county, you have access to that number. You could get the heroin delivered to you as easily and as cheaply as you get a pizza delivered. What has changed over the years, I think, is important to note, because I think it tells us something about what we have to do. When I was a county prosecuting attorney, heroin was horrible for those people who were addicted to it. And we would expect to find some people in our major cities who were heroin addicts, and sometimes they were long-term heroin addicts. Today, as I said, heroin is absolutely everywhere. When I was a prosecuting attorney, and we would arrest someone and start talking to them about what drugs they're doing, what drugs they're selling, and you would mention heroin, in the 70s at least, when I was a prosecutor, I'd have a guy look at me and say, "Hey, DeWine, I'm not crazy. I do A, B, and C drugs. I certainly am not crazy. I'm not going to do heroin. Those people who do heroin are crazy." There was some psychological barrier that was there. Today that psychological barrier is gone, which leads me to what I think, and what I said before, is the most important thing. Yes, law enforcement has to do its job. And I think we're doing more. We're giving tools to local law enforcement they've never had before with our heroin unit. Yes, treatment is very, very important. And even though treatment and education are not historically what attorney generals do, we have a program, a pilot program, that we are starting with the sheriff of Lucas County in regard to treatment. There's two, I'll do it real quick, there are two major holes in what I have held town hall meetings around the state, and we talk to people who are recovering addicts. And one of the things that recovering addict will tell you is there are people who are addicts who aren't really tied in. They may have some desire to go into treatment. They really don't know where to go. That's the first part of the program. What we're doing with this program is literally going to the hospitals. When someone overdoses, they survive, their family is there with them. That is a very teachable moment. And that is the time when you want to get to them and tell their family, here's what's available in Lucas County or Summit County, or wherever this program would be. So we're filling in that gap to tie them in with treatment. The other big hole that we've heard about when we do these town hall meetings, we talk to the heroin addicts, is what happens after treatment, immediately after treatment. And what they will tell you is that many times they relapse very quickly after treatment is over with. And they do that because they're back with the same people, they're back in the same community, et cetera, et cetera. We have what we're putting together as a pilot program. The second part of this pilot program in Toledo is a transition house. Not treatment technically, but a transition house with people there who can help them make that transition. I think that's going to work, but we'll see if it works. And if it works, we can replicate it throughout the state. But the third thing, the education, I want to get back to, because I'm really convinced that that is the most important thing anybody can do. And it's within our own hands. What we're doing in our office is we have these 3 individuals that we're hiring more who spend their full time going out and working with local communities. And a local community says, we have the desire to do something, tell us how to do it. We can tell them what's worked in other counties. If whatever community you live in, if there is not an organized anti-heroin, anti-pain medication group that involves business, that involves churches, that involves the community, you need to start one. We really, really do. Every community has got to do it. That's the only way that we're going to change the culture. Because the culture for a while was only a few people take heroin, and people are scared of it. That barrier is now gone. Kids are not scared of it, for whatever reason. we have to do a better job. One of the things when I was on President Reagan's National Commission on Drug-Free Schools, one of the things I took away from that in the 80s was that if you really want to have an impact on a young person, you have to do something every year. You can't just do it in one grade and another grade, and that's it. You got to start with kindergarten. You got to work all for age-appropriate education, and you got to go all the way through high school. Very few places can do that today. When I was in Congress, I fought against the defunding of the drug-free school money. I think it was a mistake. I said so at the time. So I think we're reaping some of the results of that today.
Are heroin addicts being sentenced to prison at the same rate as crack cocaine addicts had been, say, 20 years ago?
I don't know the answer to that. We'd have to see the data. I just don't know the data.
What's your plan to address the synthetic compounds, and what's your plan to deal with powdered alcohol compound that can be added to any liquid and is becoming available?
Legislature needs to take action on the alcohol powder, number one. As far as the synthetic drugs, we have been very active in the Attorney General's office about this. And I want to just explain for those of you who don't know what the problem is. The problem is that these synthetic drugs were started to crop up. I started noticing shortly after I became Attorney General, and you would find them in convenience stores. You'd find them of course, you'd find them in head shop places, but you also would find them in independent markets. Not a chain market, but an independent market. There'd be a crystal. It would say not for human use, but that was a wink and a nod. Everybody knew that people were getting them, going in and buying them for human use. Now, there's no quality control with this stuff. It makes it sound funny to say that, but you got to state that. There's no quality control. So somebody could go in one time, and they get their high, and they're said, well, that worked out pretty good. And the next time they go in, buy the same stuff, or what they think is the same stuff, labeled the same way, packaged the same way, and they die. We had one case that was reported about a guy who chopped up a good part of his house with a hatchet. He was hallucinating from this stuff. He thought there were raccoons, and he was trying to kill the raccoons in his house. That may sound funny, but it's not. I mean, this stuff is very nasty stuff. Here's the challenge that I've given to the state legislature. Because these chemists who do this, whether they're in China or wherever they are, what they do is they keep moving the bar. They keep changing formulation. And they do that to get around the Ohio law. So we will get some of these into our crime lab, and our scientists will test them, and they will go back to the police department and say, yeah, that's really nasty stuff, but it isn't illegal under Ohio law. That's what we've run into. What I've asked the General Assembly to do is to do what the state of Florida has done, and that is to give the Attorney General of the state the power to, once we start seeing the trend coming into our crime lab, to, on an emergency basis, list that particular drug. There could be the whole normal process. You could go through that process, which takes now 9 months to a year. That could still take place, but during that time, that drug would be listed. And once you list that drug, it's illegal. And once it's illegal, you can go in and do all the things you do when an illegal drug has been sold. We've taken a holistic approach to these places. We've used the nuisance law sometimes. We've used criminal code. We've gone at them any way that we can to try to drive them out of business and working with local police. But we need a change in the law.
Many of the amicus briefs you filed and cases you've entered outside of Ohio seem to promote your personal political beliefs, such as being against birth control coverage, as in the Hobby Lobby case. Is this the best use of the AG's office, and why do you think it's appropriate?
When I ran for Attorney General, I stated Mr. Corrigan and I had a disagreement. I think it was a very principled disagreement on both of our parts in regard to the Attorney Generals in the country who had filed a lawsuit against challenging the constitutionality of Obamacare. Voters knew that. For one of the first things I did is I joined that suit. And I've joined other suits that are similar to that. that was one of the first things that I did. It went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court decided 5-4 that we were wrong, and we all live with that, and we accept that, because we live in a nation of laws. But that was no secret to anyone, that was a difference, I think a principal difference on both of our parts. Mr. Cartwright did not think the Attorney General should do that in Ohio. I did. And voters had the opportunity to know that, I think, before they voted.
How can you assure people that those who get contracts with your office are getting the best quality, firm person to do the job?
We have, all attorney generals in Ohio for years and years have had special counsel. As I said, we're the lawyer for about everybody, every state university. Some of these cases that our different clients have, we have lawyers in our office who do those. But sometimes there's expertise that's needed. It makes no sense to have someone on staff to do it. You go out and you hire that expertise when it's appropriate to do that for your client. We have a couple criteria when we select people to work for our clients. Number one, we want someone who has had some experience and capability to do that type of work, whatever particular case that might be. It might be patent work. We're not going to hire a general practitioner, obviously. We're going to hire a patent attorney to do that. So we try to match that up. We also try to work with the client in regard to, and work with the lawyer we're selecting in regard to the fee. There are some lawyers who frankly do not want to work for the, I hesitate to say it low, because for the average citizen it doesn't sound low, certainly, but to work for a discounted rate that the state is willing to pay and the Attorney General is willing to pay. So that's, those are the considerations that we take into place, we put into place. Because of an editorial from the Akron Journal, which I thought was, after I read, I thought made some sense. We have now not changed what we do as far as who we select or what the criteria is, but we've written a form out so that every lawyer that is now hired on every particular case, there's a paper trail and someone can actually see what boxes were checked as far as all the different qualifications for that particular lawyer. Because again, we were doing that anyway, but I think as pointed out by the Akron Journal, in the spirit of openness, we should have a paper trail. So now we do have a paper trail for that.
This is the last question. It's open-ended. What advice do you have for the students out there who, for some reason, want to get into politics?
Yeah, I do have some advice, actually. When I was defeated for the United States Senate, I taught school for 3 years and taught college, and I enjoyed it a great deal. And what I really liked about it was just the students and the energy they have, and the drive they have, and the vision. Anybody that wants to get into politics, my first advice is finish your college degree. I have seen too many people who get halfway through it and they get so caught up and they can run somebody's campaign, a state senate race, or they can do this, and they drop out of school. It's okay to drop out if you know you're going right back in. My son did that for 6 months, but he knew he was going right back in. So get your education. Figure out what else in life besides politics you have a great passion for. And then get the credentials to do that. Because guess what? You might lose someday. Then you got to make a living. But you don't want to just make a living. You want to do something you passionately care about. So figure out if it's history, whether it's teaching, whether it's being an engineer, whatever it is. Get that education. Second thing, anybody who's going into the law. Again, I'm biased here, but my advice will be when you get out of college, if you can afford it, to do it, don't go into a big law firm immediately. Join a public defender's office, join a legal aid, or join a county prosecuting attorney's office. With at least 2 out of the 3, you're going to be in court all the time. And that's where the action is. And you'll get more, if you're a prosecutor, you'll get more experience in 2 years than in court than some lawyers have in a lifetime. So those of you who are going to be lawyers, do that. If you're just starting your college career and you think you want to be in political science, my other controversial advice to you would be, don't do it. You get into politics, but if I was hiring you, I would be much more impressed if you were an English major. You can get your minor in political science, but I like people who can write. And there's a lot of people who come out of school that I've hired, or at least interviewed over the years, and some that I've hired, I guess, too, who are great people, and they love politics, and they were smart as could be, they just couldn't write. If you can't write, you can't express your opinion. If you can't express your opinion, you're losing a lot. So that's my controversial advice. See, I've had 8 kids, and I got 20 grandkids, and been through the colleges, and I have a lot of opinions that they probably don't pay any more attention to than you do. So.
Thank you very much. Folks, all we can do at this point is invite you back for a bunch more of these through the month of October. The election is November 4th, and for those of you who it slipped your mind, early voting started today.
No, I'm good. I'm fine.